Okay, so this is part 2 of the diagnostic test for digital SAT math. So let's go to number 21. For the figure above, which the volume must be true, and all the labeled angles are in degrees. So we see here these little lines being all the same mean that each of the side lengths is equal. So we have each of the side lengths equal, which means that each of the corresponding angles needs to be equal in this equilateral triangle that we have. So if all the angles in a triangle add up to 180 and we divide them by 3 into the 3 separate equal angles, that means each of these has to equal 60 degrees. So it is in fact an acute triangle. Now let's see if we do 2 times 60, that's going to be 120, plus 3 times 60 is going to be 180, minus 60, do we get 240? And we do. So that is correct as well. Now, number 3 says if a perpendicular bisector with a length of 5 was drawn for this triangle, so let's do one of those right here. Perpendicular bisector, and it has a length of 5. Then it's saying the sum of the perimeters of these two resulting triangles, so like this triangle plus this triangle, they're saying the perimeters have to equal this value right here. So, and then remember perpendicular bisector, so these lengths are going to be equal as well. And then if this whole entire angle Z was 60 and now we've split it up, it's going to be split up into 30 and 30. So now we have a special right triangle situation happening with a 30, 60, 90 special right triangle. So let's pretend that this triangle, I rewrote it out here, that this is this triangle right over here. And we know that this is the setup for a special right triangle, that's a 30, 60, 90 triangle. This is how we write all of the side lengths. And we know that this side length, the x root 3, has to equal 5. So let's write that down. X root 3 is equal to 5. So if we solve for what x is, we can then figure out what the perimeter of this whole triangle is. And we know that that perimeter is the same as this perimeter because they share this side length of 5. They both have that same side length and this same side length. So to get x by itself, I divide by root 3 on each side and I get 5 root 3. But remember, we do not like to have radicals in the bottom, so we have to rationalize this by multiplying by root 3 over root 3. And when we do that, we're going to get x is equal to 5 root 3 over 3. So the perimeter would be x root 3, which is 5, plus x, which is 5 root 3 over 3, plus 2 times this x value right here, which would be 10 root 3 over 3. And let's see, if we add all those up, this is what we get. So we get, this is the perimeter just for this triangle right here, but remember there's 2 of them. So we have to double that to get the perimeter of both triangles. So when I double it or times it by 2, I get this right here, which I can simplify the 30 over 3 to 10, and then root 3 over there. So that's 10 plus 10 root 3. That's correct. So this is correct as well. So it would have to be D. Okay, so now let's do number 22. So we want to know, pause to read if you haven't already. And remember, I didn't say this at the beginning of this video because I'm not used to starting in the middle again. But last time I had to make this into 2 parts because my phone ran out of battery. But make sure that you, if you have this book already, that you're attempting these problems on your own first before watching these for corrections on anything that you can't correct yourself for the best results. Okay, so pause to read this problem if you need to. So if we want to know how many cubic centimeters of water are in the prism when it's half full, we basically have to find the volume and then say, okay, it's only going to be half of that. So the volume of a rectangular prism is going to be equal to the length times width times the height. So 10 times 5 times 8, which is going to be 400. So we have 400 as the total volume, and then we divide that by 2 to get 200 as our answer. Now pause to read number 23. Remember, with absolute value, you have 2 different options. You can have, it's saying basically that the part inside the absolute value, this inside part can be equivalent to negative 20 or positive 20, because if we take the absolute value of negative 20, we get positive 20, and if we take the absolute value of 20, we get positive 20 as well. So this inside part, negative 5 minus 3k, could equal either negative 20 or 20. We have to think and solve for both of those scenarios. So let's do that. So let's start with the one on the left. So I want to solve for k, so I'm going to add 5 to each side. That leaves me with negative 3k is equal to 25. Then I have to divide by negative 3, so I get k is equal to negative 25 over 3. Now, remember, they said k has to be greater than 0. It has to be positive, so it can't be that one, so it must be this one right here. So let's solve this one. I'm going to add 5 to each side. That gives me negative 3k is equal to negative 15. Then I have to divide by negative 3 on each side, and negative divided by negative is positive, so that would be positive 5. So this has to be the answer because it's the only solution for k that is positive or greater than 0. So pause to read 24. For number 24, you have to remember and use your knowledge of the equation for a circle, which I've written up here, and knowing that, and you have to know that this equation h comma k, that in this equation, h comma k is going to be the center of your circle. You'll notice that the equation they gave us doesn't look like that. So what you have to do first is complete the square to make it look more like the formula we're used to, and then you can easily identify what the center is. So when I'm completing the square, I like to rewrite it and then set up blanks for the parts I'm going to be filling in extra information for. So these are where my blanks would go, and I've just copied down the rest of the problem. So to figure out what goes in these blanks, you need to look at each portion individually. So what I mean by that is you have to look at the x portion right here first to determine what goes in this blank. Now you say, okay, in front of the regular x, like not the x squared, the regular x, the number in front of it, 8, you have to divide it by 2 and then square it. So the number that goes here is going to be 8 divided by 2 and then squared. So 8 divided by 2 is 4, 4 squared is 16. Now you look at this part with the y's individually and you do the same thing. You're going to do 10 divided by 2 and then squared. 10 divided by 2 is 5, 5 squared is 25. And what goes in the blanks here are the same exact numbers that you put on the left-hand side, because remember, we always need to balance equations. So if this side is going up by 16 and 25, this side also needs to go up by 16 and 25 so that it's still equal, because you can't just change the value of one side and not the other if they're still supposed to be equal. Now what we need to do is we need to factor these so that it looks more like the equation we're used to for the equation of a circle. So let's start with the x's. Let's say, okay, what does this factor into? Well, it factors into x plus 4 squared. And now we're going to do the same thing, but with the y's. And this would factor into y plus 5 squared. And that all equals, and then we just need to combine our like terms right over here on the right-hand side. And it will equal 36 on the right-hand side. Now you can easily see what h and k are right over here. I like to remember that it's always the opposite of what's right here. So like if I have a positive number here, then that means I have to make it negative to find out what h is. It's the opposite of whatever's here for my h value, so negative 4, and the same thing with my y, it would be negative 5. So those are the coordinates of the center of the circle, D. Okay, pause to read number 25. So we have these two right triangles that I've drawn, and they've told us, basically they didn't give us the triangles. We have to use the information in the problem to create a visualization or like a diagram for our triangles. They really seem to like this type of question on the digital exam based off of the study guide so far. Like this type of problem kind of showed up multiple times. So I would pay close attention to these kind of word problems with triangles. So what we're going to do is we're trying to find the value of sine S right here. So this is S, angle S. So we want to find the value of sine S. We know that the value of sine P over here is 224 over 305. And we know that P corresponds to S, meaning these angles are equivalent to each other, the same or congruent. These are the same degrees or radians, however you want to think about it. So if we have the same value for these angles, then that means that their sines should be equivalent as well. So the sine of S is going to equal the sine of P, which we already know is 224 over 305. Okay, pause for E26. So we want to find y in terms of x and z. So basically we're solving for y. So I'm going to start by looking for different relationships with my angles. I know corresponding angles are, that these would be corresponding angles right here if I'm thinking of this line as the transversal, because this is top right and this is also top right. So this has to be equal to z. Ooh, let me write that a little bit nicer. So this is equal to z as well. And then I know that this angle right here plus x needs to be 180, so that means that this angle is the same as 180 minus x. So I drew a little arrow. This angle right here is equal to 180 minus x, and the same logic can be applied to the y portion right here, where this angle plus this angle make up a straight line, which is 180 degrees. So this angle right here has to be equal to 180 degrees minus y. You'll notice these three angles add up to a triangle, which is 180 degrees. So if we add up all these angles, we should get 180. So here's an equation that says that. If we add up these three angles, we get 180. Now all I have to do is combine my like terms and solve for y, because I'm trying to find y. So I've just combined my like terms, and now I'm going to subtract 360 from each side. And I'm going to add x to each side. You might see now, like some of you might be saying, oh, I would just add x and then subtract z. I'm just trying to do it one step at a time for people that might not see that right away. So I'm going to add x to each side now. And then I'm going to subtract z from each side. And then I'm going to divide everything by -1 to get y completely by itself. You also could have just added y over here and then moved the 180 over this way. But I like to teach like one strategy that works for all students, which is like get everything away from what you're trying to isolate. And I try to be consistent in my instruction, but that is an option as well. So then this is what we get as our final answer. So that would be A. So now pause to read number 27. So we want the probability that the breed is Persian if we're selecting at random from female cats. So a lot of people will miss this problem because they think that they have to add up 8 plus 7 plus 6 plus 9 to be the bottom number, and that's incorrect. You have to think of the population you're picking from. So it's saying that your only options to pick from are the female cats. So you're picking out of a total of 15 because 6 plus 9 is 15. And then the part that's the desirable outcome, or what you're being asked about, the desired outcome, is going to be that you have a Persian cat breed. So there's only 6 possible options, or 6 cats that fit that criteria of a Persian female cat breed, I guess. So then it would be 6 over 15. And if you put that into your calculator, 6 divided by 15, you're going to get 0.4 C. So now let's talk about that. Now that you finished the exam, or the diagnostic test, let's talk about how to analyze this to most effectively study for your upcoming exam. So you're going to grade your diagnostic test using this answer key, like it tells you what the answer for number 1 is, blah, blah, blah. And then each of the rows also has a corresponding chapter that question tests. So like, for instance, if you got number 1 wrong, because maybe you picked A instead of B, the answer is B, but you got it wrong, you probably need to work on this chapter, the expressions chapter. So the key doesn't just tell you like, did you get it right or wrong? It tells you, okay, if you got this wrong, you should probably focus on this chapter. That's why I say highlight the chapters that correspond to the questions you miss. So if you missed number 1, you would highlight, oh, I need to do the expressions chapter. There's some of them that are 2 chapters, like number 11, which it says figures and graph analysis plus other data and statistics. That means that you should probably focus on both those chapters if you got number 11 wrong. Let's see, what else did I want to mention? I would recommend doing the chapters in order, in the order they're organized in the book, which also happens to be the order that they are organized in the answer key as well. Just because I was very intentional with how I determined ordering chapters in this book. So I didn't just do it based off of like one criteria. I kind of mixed a bunch. So I list the criteria here of what I did when I was determining like the order of the chapters. So it basically goes from what's most helpful generally to what's least helpful. So like it'll show up sooner in the book towards the beginning if it's something that I recommend you do first, or if I think it's something that I deem that's most important, based on a variety of factors, which these are the factors. So I based it off the type of questions that appear most frequently on the exams, and also the types of questions that appear most consistently on exams. And then the relationship between the various types of questions, like, for instance, like systems of equations, and linear equations, interpreting equations, like those are pretty close to each other because they're very similar in the concepts. So like if you're learning one, you might as well learn the other very soon rather than like forgetting all that you've learned and like 5 chapters later it's brought up again, because that's what the quizzes are for you to practice that periodically. But when you're actually like trying to master the concept at first, it's more helpful to have like stuff that's related more together, unless there was some other factor that outweighed it more, like the frequency or consistency sort of thing. Or the types of questions that most students need to work on first. There's I've been doing this for a long time. There's a general trend in like what kinds of questions students forget how to do by the time it gets to taking the ACT and SAT. And it's pretty predictable, like when I do my online courses and stuff, what most students are going to be missing and what I need to review. So that I also took into account when creating the order of the chapters in this book. So yeah, just analyze the your diagnostic and then start doing the chapters in order. And obviously make sure you follow the other specifics in whichever study plan you chose was best for your needs.